Hi, ladies. I love you. I love you, Jalen. I love you, Jamina. It was nice talking to you tonight. And Jamina, this is the first time that we've talked in quite a while on the phone. That was lovely. Thank you for inviting me to your Yorktown trip. And I am happy to report that I had already applied to be a chaperone 2 days ago. I'm really hoping to get into both of your field trips. Jay's, yours is coming right around the corner. And I've got my application in. I can't wait to see you both tomorrow at lunch. I love you. Bringing Chick-fil-A. This time, Chick-fil-A for sure. But I wanted to read you a bedtime story. And I found an awesome online site that you might enjoy. It's called... What is it? openlibrary.org. A ton of books on it, including our favorites, Bailey School Kids. They have some that we haven't read, and so I wanted to read chapter 1 of the first one that I found, called Gremlins Don't Chew Bubblegum. So let's begin. Snap, pop, the lights in the third grade classroom went out. The only light came from the windows along one wall. "It's a blackout!" shrieked Liza. Eddie jumped out of his seat, his curly red hair bouncing. "All right, we gotta go home. We can't have school in the dark." Mrs. Jeepers, their teacher, cleared her throat. "Students, I'm sure everything will be fine. Principal Davis will make an announcement about this unfortunate electrical failure." The students waited and waited. Then they waited some more. But the lights stayed off and there was no announcement. Melody and Liza yawned. Howie tapped his pencil on his desk. Eddie wiggled and squirmed until he fell out of his seat. Everybody laughed. Everybody, that is, except Mrs. Jeepers. She touched her green brooch, and all the students suddenly got very quiet. Whenever Mrs. Jeepers touched her brooch, they knew they had better shape up or else. Most of the third graders thought Mrs. Jeepers was a vampire. Even Eddie slid quietly back into his seat. Carrie stuck her hand into the air. "I'd be happy to take a note to the secretary." "That is an excellent idea," Mrs. Jeepers said as Carrie smiled. "But it is Melody's turn to deliver a message." Mrs. Jeepers quickly jotted a note and handed it to Melody. "Please take this to Miss Kidwell," Mrs. Jeepers said. "Who?" Melody asked. "Miss Moore, the regular secretary, is on her honeymoon," Mrs. Jeepers said. "I met her temporary replacement, Miss Kidwell, this morning when she brought around the lunch tickets." Carrie stuck her tongue out as Melody walked past her desk and out of the third grade classroom. Melody looked down the long dark hallway and started to turn around to give the note to Carrie, but she didn't want the class to think she was afraid. So she took a deep breath and headed into the shadows. It was so dark she had to feel her way by touching the walls. The only light came from her tiny watch. She'd never noticed before how far the office was from her classroom. The office looked at least 100 miles away. Every room she passed was dark, and inside she could hear teachers reassuring their students. After slowly walking down the tomb-like hall, Melody finally made it to the office. Principal Davis was staring at the electrical fuse box on the office wall. The tiniest woman Melody had ever seen stood next to him. She was wearing a long lime green dress that was covered with bright orange flowers. The strange woman's jet black braids stuck out all over her head and sparkled with streaks of silver. Melody blinked. When she opened her eyes, the woman was looking at Melody, the hundreds of tiny braids hanging limp at her shoulders. Melody couldn't see a fleck of silver in them. "Yikes," Melody said to herself. "What's that, little lady?" the woman asked. Lights," Melody blurted. "There aren't any lights. My teacher wanted me to give this note to Miss Kidwell." When the lady nodded, her braids swayed. "That would be me." Melody handed the note to Miss Kidwell. On Miss Kidwell's right wrist was a bright silver chain. One lonely charm dangled from the bracelet. It was a light bulb charm. Miss Kidwell nodded and chuckled. "Your teacher is right. The lights have gone kaput." "They're definitely kaput. What this old building needs is new wiring, Principal Davis grumbled and scratched the shiny top of his bald head. I wonder if one of these switches will turn the lights back on. Principal Davis reached into the fuse box and punched a button. The radio on the secretary's desk blared to life. Then he punched another button. This time the electric pencil sharpener started buzzing. It must be this one, Principal Davis said as he punched a third button. Suddenly the bell clanged throughout the halls of Bailey Elementary. Melody clapped her hands over her ears and Miss Kidwell started laughing. Principal Davis quickly punched more buttons, but the bell kept ringing. I've tried everything I can think of, he yelled over the ringing bell. This is a very tricky problem. Miss Kidwell winked at Melody. It's a good trick, all right. You kids can't work with this racket. It must be your lucky day. You don't know my teacher, Melody told her. Mrs. Jeepers will make us work no matter what. Besides, I really wanted to do my science project video, but I can't do that without electricity. Miss Kidwell placed her hands on her hips and shook her head. Tisk, tisk, tisk. No need to frown. The problem is only temporary, like me. You need lights, so I'll help. But when? Melody asked. I'm supposed to show my video after lunch. Don't worry about the time, Miss Kidwell, tapped Melody's watch. You won't miss that special science class. Melody smiled. Thanks. I can show everyone how I use 10 different seeds to attract birds to my yard. Miss Kidwell nodded. You must be a very smart girl. Now scoot to class. Melody stopped at the office door and watched Miss Kidwell wave goodbye. Was it her imagination, or were there 2 charms dangling from Miss Kidwell's bracelet now? We're going to go to chapter 2 as well. When Melody got back to the room, the class was lining up for an early recess. Perhaps by the time we get back, the lights will be on, Miss Jeepers explained and rubbed her forehead. And the bell will be silent. I hope the lights never come back on, Eddie told Melody, Howie, and Liza when they got outside. They were standing under a big oak tree on the playground. Miss Kidwell promised the lights would be on soon, Melody told them. I hope so, Liza said. We can't show our science projects in the dark. Eddie leaned against the oak tree. I'd probably get a better grade in the dark, he admitted. Wait till you see mine. It's incredible, Howie told his friends. It's all about radio waves. My dad helped me with it. Howie's dad was a scientist at BATS, the Federal Aeronautics Technology Station, a nearby research laboratory. That's not fair, Eddie complained. You got special help. I had to make my stupid remote control airplane by myself. You're mad because it didn't work, Liza said. My project's about static electricity. The best part is when her hair stands straight up. She pulled her blonde hair up as high as it would go. You look like you stuck your finger in a light socket and got fried, Eddie said. That's how the secretary looked, Melody said. My aunt said getting married will do that to you, Liza giggled. Melody shook her head. I mean the temporary secretary. When I went to her office, her hair was standing right up. It looked like it had electricity running through it. Eddie patted Melody on the back. Maybe she left her electric rollers in too long. I'm serious, Melody said. There's something very strange about her. What? Howie asked. I don't know, Melody said, but I'm going to figure it out. Well, while you're figuring, let's play kickball, Eddie suggested. He snatched a ball and raced to the far end of the playground. A few other kids joined them and they quickly chose teams. They played and played until they were out of breath, and then they played some more. When it was Liza's turn, she rushed toward the big red ball and kicked as hard as she could. Unfortunately, she missed. She fell down in the dirt. Ow, Liza said. Eddie laughed out loud. Liza can't even kick the ball, he hollered. Liza's face turned redder than a strawberry. She hopped up, dusting off the seat of her pants. I can too, she snapped at Eddie. But the sun was in my eyes. Besides, I'm thirsty. I need to go inside for a drink. Eddie laughed even harder. You just want to go in because you can't play kickball. Do not, Liza sputtered. I'm thirsty too, Melody interrupted before Eddie could tease Liza any more. But we can't go inside yet. The bell is still ringing. The 4 kids listened to the shrill ringing coming from Bailey Elementary School. You'd think they'd have fixed it by now, Howie said. He looked at Melody. What time do you have? Melody sat down on the ground and looked at her watch. Oh no, she cried. It's broken. That's weird that your watch and the school clocks would break at the same time, Liza said, stooping beside Melody. That's it, Melody jumped up. I realized what's so strange about Miss Kidwell. What? Liza asked. Everything she touches gets messed up, Melody explained. Just like Liza, Eddie laughed. She even messes up kickball. No, I mean really messed up, Melody said. Like your brain, Eddie said. Nobody can touch things and make them mess up. Unless she's a gremlin, Howie suggested. A what? Melody, Liza, and Eddie asked together. A gremlin, Howie said. My dad told me about them when we were having trouble with my science project. Gremlins are little creatures that mess up mechanical things. I mess up mechanical things all the time at my house, Eddie said. I guess that makes me a gremlin. That makes you a walking disaster, Melody said. But this thing with Miss Kidwell is serious. First it was the lights, now our watches. What will be next? I hope you enjoyed that. It should be an interesting one. I love you, ladies. Sweet, sweet dreams. I can't wait to see you for lunch. Bye for now.